So unfortunately, he's probably come to the least prepared candidate because I've been out every day since the election started, walking about 15 miles a day to try and get to everybody's house, to try and make people aware that I'm standing. You know, as an independent, self-funded, it's really, really difficult to get your message and your point across as to why you want to stand and why people should, you know, use their vote to vote for you. And the reason I believe you should use your vote to vote for me is because I am unbeholden to any national party. I only want to work for you. This week, a lot of the national parties are releasing their manifestos. I don't have one. I have values such as, you know, being accountable, being contactable, and trying my best to serve you. I don't see it as a one-way conversation like the national parties do. I believe that there's a dialogue to be had with me and the community. So I only aim to serve you guys. There are some things that I have really strong ideas on, such as housing. I believe that we are in a housing crisis. There are unaffordable rents across the town. There's the condition of housing, and there's the availability of housing, much of which there isn't, unfortunately. I think that pretty much over the last 15 years, every public service that you can think of has been run down to the ground. We're paying more taxes than ever before and getting much less back for them. So I believe that I want to make a change, and I want to see the two parties that haven't worked for us over a number of years held to account for that. So that's why I believe we need a strong, independent voice in Parliament to do that, and that's why I'm running. So sorry for winging that a little bit, but thank you for listening.
Hello. I'm Miles Penn. I'm the SDP candidate. Many of you are probably wondering who on earth the SDP are. What we are, we're a left-leaning, softly conservative party. What that means is we're going to ask the questions you actually want asked. We're going to have the different conversations regarding immigration, sorry, I'm winging it as well, I do apologise. Regarding housing, regarding net zero, regarding the things that actually matter to us, but also at the same time, unlike some of my colleagues, we're not going to promise $1 million tax cuts to, sweeten the deal, only to then proceed to cut all the service we rightly need. I've lived here, I'm 29, I've lived here my entire life. I've watched growing up, year on year, or essentially state-mandated decline. I've watched our roads fall apart. I've watched myself being priced out of housing for various reasons. And I've watched the Tories and Labour whitter on, bicker between themselves. Some of them Lib Dems too. Rarely. I've watched them sort of just whitter on and not actually get to the bottom of anything. The parliamentary debate the other day, when you watch Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak sort of just spend 2 hours having a go at each other, not being able to answer any questions. I believe that we need an alternative, and that alternative is the SDP. Now, we're the fastest growing party in the country, and frankly, we're what people want. I appreciate maybe what on earth I'm doing up there, but I'm running because we need an alternative. We need something that isn't the same old duopoly that has benefited us. We need people who are from Bournemouth, grew up in Bournemouth, see Bournemouth as the only home they'll ever really see, because what a great place it is. And we need people like me. I'm 29, I'm young, I'm growing up to be here for the long haul and not see it as some Westminster careerist opportunity. I look forward to answering your questions. Do apologise if I do come across nervous, because this is my first time doing this, so hope you bear with me in that. But yeah, appreciate you all being here.
Well, good evening everyone, thank you all for coming along. My name is Martin Houlden. I'm a long-time resident of Bournemouth. I've lived here for decades now. I've worked here, raised kids here, sent them to the schools here. And I can remember how the town used to be, how it used to be a safe place to walk around. I'm standing for the Reform Party, and out of the 7 candidates here, I'm probably the only one who isn't scared to talk about immigration, to say that we need to get a grip on the ludicrous numbers of additional people coming into the country. 670,000 additional people last year. 745,000 the year before that. So, if you're wondering why public services are suffering, why housing or rents are so unaffordable, why everything is so congested, this is the reason. Now, no one argues that a sensible level of immigration is good for the country. But if unlimited immigration is such a benefit to the Treasury, how come our taxes are at the highest level they've been in over 70 years? And at Reform, we're the only party prepared to say what the others here won't. And that is quite simple. We want to freeze non-essential immigration. We're going to stop the boats, small boats we picked up, and take them back to France. We want to prioritise social housing for British people, because I'm sick of seeing our people having to sleep rough when people who are here illegally are given accommodation in luxury hotels. It's just not fair. It's not all about immigration. We want to actually grow the economy, grow away out of this mess. We want to boost wages by lifting the tax threshold from 12,500 a year to 20,000. Effectively, that puts about £1,500 a year back into your pocket, which is a huge sum of money, especially for those people on low incomes. We want to scrap VAT on fuel bills and lower energy duty to ease the cost of living. And we want to train our young people for careers, especially in the NHS, where our policy is that doctors and nurses who work in the NHS for 10 years will have their student loans written off. My feeling is that this country has been going along the same path, certainly as long as I recall it, at least the last 20 or 30 years, and swapping between blue and red parties every few years really hasn't made much of a difference. Reform is the only party out there offering to rip up the status quo and really get to grips with the big problems that both the Tories and Labour have heaped upon us over the last 25 years. So we'll all be talking about change tonight, I dare say. If you want real change, if you want reform, then you have to vote for it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joe Salmon. I live here in Bournemouth with my wife and our 2 children. I'm a counsellor for the Moordown ward, as is my wife, and I've worked in the NHS for the last 8 years now. I was working for South West Ambulance Service at the height of the pandemic as the hub manager at St Leonard's Hospital, and it was my experiences then that made me realise actually we really need people like me in politics. All that needed to happen during the pandemic was for our politicians to follow the clinical advice and keep their bloody hands out of till, and they couldn't even manage out. Billions of pounds lost to COVID for them. We had a situation where millions of pounds were spent on PPE that either didn't exist or didn't work, and the tender process seemed to be trying to bump into Matt Hancock down the pub when he's not trying to seduce his employees. It's disgusting, the state of politics in this country. We have been here before though. I remember in 1997 listening to all the Labour pledges, how Tony Blair would take marketisation out of our public services and sort them out, stop hitting doctor against doctor, nurse against nurse. And instead, when Labour came into power, we saw the solidification of that purchaser-provider split in the NHS and foundation trusts. We saw the same thing in education with academy schools. We saw things like PFI, which have hobbled our public services for generations. We cannot trust the promises from Labour and the Tories. because they are wedded to, they are beholden to the system of legalised corruption and bribery that exists in our country because of our laws around lobbying and political donations. Frank Hesketh does not give millions of pounds to the Conservative Party because he thinks Rishi Sunak is a snappy dresser. He makes those donations because he knows he will get a return on that investment tenfold in how his company can profit from the NHS. Similarly, Labour's incoming Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, he isn't being given tens of thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds, I think, in fact, by people linked to private healthcare because they really like the cut of his jib. They are donating that money because they know that he will not take their noses out of the trough. And if anything, if you listen to the actual reforms he's intending, the greater involvement of the private sector, he will be widening that trough. It is corruption. What's on the ballot this election is a really clear binary choice. It is between the traditional parties that are dominated by that literal, it happens in broad daylight, that legal corruption that happens with those massive donations, and then candidates like myself and the other independents who aren't funded like that. If you want to know what anybody on this stage will do, follow the money. All of those glossy promises and election leaflets and all of that only last until election day. Whoever pays the piper calls the tune. And that is how politics works in this country at the moment, and that is why our country is so broken. That is the fundamental problem we have to address. And that is why you will see again and again, when people like myself, people like the wonderful Green Council we've got in this ward, Sarah, stand for election, we get in and we make a real difference. And I cannot wait to do that as Bournemouth East's next MP. Thank you for telling me.
My name is Jon Nicholas and I'm the Lib Dem candidate in this election, and full disclosure, I'm not the slightest bit scared of talking about immigration. And I've seen it, and Martin, if you think they're luxury hotels, then you've been severely shortchanged on holiday. Very briefly, I first moved here in 1985, and I've sort of crossed this constituency and this ward multiple times. By bus, on foot, on cycle. I've worked at Sainsbury's in Boscombe. I used to flip burgers in the Hamby House in Boscombe. Don't you remember the Hamby House in Boscombe? Yeah, that's where I learned to flip burgers. Then a chip job in Tuckton to sort of pay for some of my schooling. I also worked at the Hungry Hiker. So I've worked in sort of various cross-section of places. Currently, I'm an associate practitioner with Vita Nova in Boscombe, and I get involved in a sort of interactive, creative work that works predominantly with people with mental health issues and challenges, and people recovering from addiction, people who are in recovery. Coupled with that, I work all over the country doing conflict management work. Interactive, dialogue-based activities that try and broker more useful relationships between groups that are in antagonistic conflict, either because of stories they've heard, different narratives that are being spread, or because of real sort of challenges that they're experiencing. It takes me all over. And the country is in a very sick condition, I'm very sad to say. There are, you can see the social fabric literally falling apart, sometimes in front of your eyes. I was at the Citizens Advice Bureau this morning, went to speak to the staff there, and they gave me just a map basically of the issues and challenges. And what's happening now is a relatively new trend. People are presenting with one issue, but on further discovery there's many, many more. So there are people in multiple needs. There's housing crisis, there's cost of living, there are a whole range of challenges. And we are becoming increasingly polarised. I'm going next week to work in Houlden on a process that we've designed in order to facilitate more useful conversations about the far right. And it's a dialogue orientation, trying to engage with people you vehemently disagree with, to take the violence and pain and unpleasant rhetoric out of the situation. And I'm very hopeful that this election stays like that. I have all reason to believe that it can do. But I make that point because we are so stuck in positions, we've lost the art of dialogue and compromise. And with all due respect to Tobias, who I think is a decent person, I can't understand how anybody's been a member of that party for such a long time. It has crumbled. You can laugh, what I mean is I think he is, but I think his party has completely lost its way. It is feeding some of the things that I have to challenge in communities. 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Tom Hayes and I'm standing to be your Labour MP for Bournemouth East. I want to start by thanking the Residents Association for putting on this event and all of you for coming along. I'm here today as your Labour candidate for MP, as someone who understands firsthand the challenges facing our community. Not merely because I live in East Cliff and Springboard itself, but because my journey has been shaped by caring for disabled parents as a child, by toiling in low-income jobs as a teenager, learning and earning whatever I could in order to build a brighter future for myself, my loved ones, and my community. These experiences aren't distant memories for me. They're the driving force behind my present and my future, the bedrock upon which my commitment to public service stands. The memory of unanswered police calls, the bureaucratic maze of dysfunctional housing and council departments, that feeling of being adrift without the language or skills to navigate life's complexities. Those were the problems that I had growing up in the 1980s. But when I knock on the doors of Bournemouth East, those are the problems that are facing countless people. For nearly a decade I've served as a councillor, tackling austerity, supporting communities through the pandemic. As deputy leader of a council, I've shouldered the responsibility of leadership and ensured that a council serves every citizen with compassion and diligence. And today, as the Chief Executive of a charity, I provide vital services to those battling with mental health, crises, homelessness, and domestic abuse. I'm in a hurry. We should be in a hurry. No one should feel abandoned and adrift. No one in our communities should endure a government as corrupt, as incompetent, and as willfully dangerous as the one we have right now. And we stand at a crossroads, battered by more than a decade and more of this government, the gaps in our society widening into chasms. You can feel it in our society, you can feel it in this room, that tension, that need for people to come together and heal as a society. What we have instead is a Tory government spread a culture of division and blame that's left millions behind. I'm here as your candidate for MP because I refuse to accept that this has to be our future. We can do better. Enough is enough. And I have a plan, a commitment to bridge those gaps, to restore hope to our communities, to bring unity to our society, and I'm going to make sure that you, the people of Bournemouth East, are not alone. Thank you.
My turn. Thank you personally very much indeed for the opportunity to speak and say a few words this evening. Thank you to the welcoming committee outside as well. Thank you to the security who had to come here to... Oh, they made it inside. That's great. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to speak later. It says a little bit about our politics, the fact that we now require security for these events. I'm sure we're going to get onto policy in further detail, but I just want to perhaps begin because I think the reason, the value of these events is that you actually get to see the personality, the person, the individual that is seeking to represent you as your parliamentarian. Now, we just marked the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings. My grandfather was a parachutist. He landed in Normandy. I remember with him when I was a little child, a very tiny little child, and he showed me the medals that he had won. He didn't really want to talk about it too much. He showed me his burial. And I'm sure that inspired me to consider perhaps looking into the armed forces, a sense of duty as to what I should do with my life. It helped shape my life, along with my mother as a teacher and my father, a civil servant working for the United Nations. That's actually been the driving force in what's guided me throughout my life. to actually be able to stand up, have the courage to speak out, even if it actually gets me into trouble. I'm an interventionist by heart. I will cross the road if I see something wrong. And yes, there is things wrong with the Conservative Party. There has been for the last few years. There's no doubt about it. I've had the privilege of being the parliamentarian here for the last couple of decades. And I share with you, and I'm very, very honest, to say that the last few years have been the most testing. The most testing not just from an international perspective because of the global headwinds that we've had to face. Half of our GDP is affected by what goes on abroad. That's had a knock-on impact, the cost of living crisis, which I'm sure we're going to explore later. But it's also had a profound impact on what's going on in the UK and indeed in my party. Where should my party actually go? And the reason why I'm on the backbenches, or we're on the backbenches, no longer an MP, because I dare to stand up to my own party. And that is, I think, an indication perhaps of the type of parliamentarian that I would like to see. I was actually born in the United States, and there, if you want to be a senator, you have to be over 35 before you can even stand. Why? It's because you're obliged to go and get some life experience. So when you end up in the Senate, you end up doing public service, you can speak with some authority. Now, whether you were a councillor, as I've been, or indeed a member of Parliament, I like to look at anybody in the eye and say, what do you stand for? I want to see the energy, the determination, the grit, the tenacity to say, yes, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to change. It might be small or it might be large. That's what I want to see. And I don't mind whatever party, whatever hue you might be. That's the passion that I want to see in politics. And I'll share with you that things have changed. It's become very populist, it's become very, very angry. And we saw it to some degree today. We certainly saw it outside of my house as well, where the messaging that you get is designed to disrupt, to sow discord, to actually engender a little bit of hate as well, to actually upset. That's not what I want to be. You're not here, I'm already being heckled by it, but please, you may not like what I have to say. Please respect my right to say it. And I'll make that really, really clear. That I don't feel personal. I will not go personal. I will not criticise any individuals. I will criticise policy, absolutely right. And I put my hand up to say it has been difficult, but I can look in the mirror and I can look at you and I can actually tell you exactly what I stand for and be proud of it. Thank you very much indeed.